So, how did Vercel build this page where you can search for whatever domain you want to buy and you get all these results and you can choose the one that you want to purchase and you can get more results like this. Okay, hi everyone, I'm Spencer and I'm a freelance web developer and I'm here sharing things that I've learned while working on my own projects. So this page is really interesting. We have this great effect where we're streaming in results and then gradually loading more data into the client. And it looks like they're using the query to the query string up here to dictate all of this. So our search term right here is in this queue property, and our limit, how many results we're going to see, is in this limit property. And so if we load the page up without any query, we just see nothing. And then when we type in, it's gradually adding to the query up here as we type, and then it gets some results. So at first, you see that it knows it has 24 domains, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 by 4, 24 domains that it wants to show you. But you don't immediately have all of the information about each of them. Like when we start this up, all of them are just grayed out because Vercel is also fetching some more data about the domain. It's trying to figure out, is this available for me to sell to this client and how much does it cost? So once it's fetched that additional data, then it can show, yes, sp.finance is available and it costs $300. A very common maneuver to have to do in your website if you're getting some user input in a search box like this and are going to show the client some results and then maybe do an additional fetch for each of those results. So let's talk about how you can accomplish this. The first biggest thing is that Vercel has this amazing REST API that it exposes to all of its clients where yeah, you can use a bunch of the functions that they use in their website. So it has this nice domains collection, and the first two endpoints in this domain are check a domain availability and check the price for a domain. So check an availability is going to be this, and you will get back available, true or false. And check the price of a domain is going to look like that, and you will get back price number, period number, and the period is just the number of years that you will buy the domain for. Is basically always 1, but I guess they wanted to include that in case they want to change it in the future. So you could see that when you type something in here, it's saying, okay, give me, let's show this guy, let's show the client the first 24 domains that they might be interested in that match the term that they typed in. And then let's fetch these two endpoints for each one of those domains and figure out, is it available? This one is not. Is it available? This one is. If it is available, how much does it cost? And show them that data. So, couple of things are going on here. Vercel, creator of Next.js, of course, they built this with Next.js. At least I hope they did. I hope they eat their own dog food there. So, one major concept that is pretty well known and popularized right now is streaming, which is in this part of the documentation. And basically, if you have a server component that has some data in it, and then you want to render another server component that fetches some data like this would be like your posts page on a social media page. So you go ahead and fetch all of those posts and use the React suspense component to add this fallback where it's going to say, hey, we're loading the feed until this asynchronous component returns the data that has the posts in it, and then you display display the posts. So that's what basically the core concept to what this is doing. We load this up and we know we have these 24 components, but also we want to figure out what's the data for each of them individually, and that would look something like this, where you've got a little domain names array, and you're mapping through that array and you're rendering a suspense component. You have a fallback that just like in light gray, maybe it's grayed out, it's kind of conveying to the client, hey, I'm thinking about what the rest of this component is going to look like, and it says the domain name because you don't know anything else yet. And then the domain component inside of the suspense component, this is an async server component that also has a little get request in here. So this is my domain. It takes the domain name, and the first thing it does is request the status of the domain. And then it gets the JSON version of that status, and then it checks some stuff about that domain. If the status is available, then or if the status dot available equals false. These will all come in like this, by the way. This is my server running. I'll demo this in a second. So if status is false, then we're going to return this unavailable component. And if not, then we're also going to fetch the price. And then if there is a price, then we'll return this available domain component. And if not, return unavailable. If not, again, return unavailable. And this is kind of your fallback inside your child component. That is like if we don't really get the response we were expecting at all, then we'll render this error state. So that's how you could do streaming in Next.js 13 and up, and it will look something like this. I'm actually building the exact same feature into my own platform. So I'm basically just using Vercel's API to sell domains to my clients through Vercel. So that API is available, and if you can figure out the UI, then you can basically have the same app. So that's what I have here, and if you type in, it will basically do the same thing. So it's streaming those results in and thinking about is this available and what's the price, and deciding. But the problem is if you do this plenty of times and you're continuing to add to the query here, you're continuing to increase the limit. If you continue, then eventually you get rate limited by Vercel right here. And it says try again in 38 seconds. So that is because we're getting this error. And Vercel is saying you're getting rate limited, you've given too many requests, try again in 38 seconds. And then it actually, this is helpful, it says, you've sent us more than 120 requests to the domain status API. So that's just the first one right here. It's saying I hit this 120 times. But look at the client over here. We're only at limit 48. So what does this mean? How could we have possibly hit it 120 times? It's because the built-in HTTP cache in the new Next.js, it only caches requests for unique URLs. So if you do, if you do fetch, if you're fetching like this URL with q equals spenpo, then it will cache that request. And if you go back to q equals spenpo again, it already has that cache. It doesn't make the request to Vercel a second time. But when we hit load more, we're actually changing the URL. We're changing the endpoint that we're querying to a new URL with a different limit. So Vercel is not, Next.js is not automatically caching all of this data that it's already fetched in its default HTTP cache. So we're actually fetching all of this stuff again. So first we had 16 in here, and it hit that status endpoint 16 times. But then we changed the limit to 32, and it basically hit that same endpoint another 16 times, even though it already fetched the first 16. And then we changed it to 48, so it hit that endpoint another 48 times after it had already hit it 16 plus 32, 48. So that was 96 right there. And yeah, the more you do it, it's just like that. It's doubling the amount of requests every single time, and you're just going to keep getting rate limited because even though you've already loaded this data, all of the ones that you've already fetched into the client, it's fetching them again because this URL has never been cached before, this unique URL when you get to 80. So the way that you can fix that is with Next.js's unstable cache function. And this, as far as I can tell, is the only way that Vercel would have built this, where you can just kind of, make these requests for days here. Obviously, this is Vercel's API. They're probably not rate limiting themselves, but there's got to be a way for just their clients on a basic plan like me to build this too. So they have this unstable cache function, and this is how you can cache results of an expensive operation, like database queries, for example, to reuse them across multiple requests. So the idea here is you use this function, you pass in an async function that returns a promise, and then you can also pass in these identifiers this is just like a way to, or actually you have to have a way to make this function unique in Vercel's cache. So you can add an identifier like that to give it like a unique key in Vercel's cache so that it can differentiate, which cache should I return when this request is made. And also, if you have any parameters in this async function, this goes into the identifiers too. So that's another way to make it unique. And then there's a third option as well. You can also pass in options, which is the same as the Next 14 additions to the Node.js fetch API, or you can include tags and a revalidate interval. So this unstable cache returns a function that basically will return you a cache value if you request the same key. And the way you can integrate that with this feature would look a little something like this. So instead of just running get domain status, which by the way, this is like from my Vercel service, this is the API that we were just looking at. It's just a function that uses a Node.js fetch, passes in the name to the query, and I'm also passing in my team ID, but this is not necessary. You could do this just on your individual account. To get request, and the headers here are just my API key for Vercel. So of course these don't start with next public, so I did it like that just to kind of force myself to only run these functions on the server so that I'm never exposing my key to the client. So this new get status function over here, it's returning or it's invoking the Next.js unstable cache function, and then I'm just taking the same get domain status that I was running in the server component and running that and getting the JSON in here and returning this. So this is an async function. It's going to return a promise. I included this key just because the name here and the name here for get status and get price are going to be exactly the same. So I needed something to say, hey, this is the cache key for status and this is the cache key for price. So basically the keys will be a combination of this array and this parameter. So both of those considered, it will make sure that like everything fetched by this function will, these two functions considered will be unique. Yeah, and then I also included a tag as well, just in case I want to revalidate that. So the way you would implement this is you would take get status, and instead of fetching this function, we would just do get status instead. And then I don't need to rec.json anymore because I'm already doing that right here. So get rid of that. And then, wrong spot over here. So, okay, yeah, I changed that to get domain price. Don't even know where I'm at over here. Okay, so I changed this guy to get status. And then I don't need rec.json anymore. Can get rid of that and just change this to status. Same with price. So price happens down here. And I won't need this anymore. Can just change this to price. So then every time we reload this page, when we're adding on to that query, we're going to run get status and get price in this unstable cache function, and that value will be cached. So when we get to 32, 48, 72 results, it's only going to refetch another 16. It's not going to refetch the whole bunch in every one of those server components. And let's see if this guy works this way. We could just go back. And we should be good to go here. So let's see if we can load some more in, and some more, and some more. And that's nice. And eventually you might even still get rate limited here, but I just as a safety said, if I get rate limited, so this is when I have the error right here, I'm just going to use the revalidate tag function so that since we're running this function, I put the tag right here, and I'm going to revalidate that tag so that it deletes this one that gave me an error from the cache. So even if I do get rate limited, it's not going to cache that rate limited response. And once I'm clear to make requests to Vercel again, it's been long enough, then yeah, what am I trying to say? Then yeah, it won't have a cache value for that key, and we'll be able to cache the valid value for all these domains. So yeah, that's how you could do some streaming, and especially use the unstable cache API to if you're changing the URL consistently but still want to cache some data. That's kind of what they left that tool for. And of course, the function is unstable. They labeled it that because they might change it. It's like, just a work in progress, but it works pretty well for this use case where your URL is very dynamic, but you want to save some values that are going to consistently get fetched by the client if they're not cached. All right. That was quick, but I think that pretty much sums everything up. Again, this is the feature. I'm integrating this into my website just because I've got a little template project where people can basically use a UI that I built to create a project with my Vercel account and kind of manage that themselves. So this whole feature is sort of the domains piece of that. I'm going to be releasing some new content about the rest of this project. So leave me a comment if you're interested in that, and if you want to hear more. All right, everybody. That should do it for today. So thanks everybody for listening, and I'll see you next time.